What's going on, everybody? So today I'm going to be doing a video. It's sort of a top 10 collecting tips for those of you that are new to collecting. I just started collecting again about 7 years ago, but I was a big collector back in the 80s and 90s, only to learn that all my cards when I was a kid are pretty much worthless, and got back into collecting. But it's been a lot of fun, and I made a ton of mistakes, and wish I could have watched a video like this. I wish I could play this for myself 7 years ago, or even better, 30 years ago. And hopefully there are going to be some people that are sort of new to collecting that can learn something. And I know a lot of people that watch my channel are very experienced collectors. It'll be interesting to see if you guys sort of agree with this. Feel free to leave comments if you completely disagree. And I have no problem with if you guys disagree or if you have questions. So anyway, to start with the top 10, I don't, it's not any particular order, but starting off with number one, quality over quantity. With baseball cards, it is so important to focus on quality. This is obviously an example of a quality card that I could never afford for $250,000. But just as an example, if you have like $100 to spend, and you're going to go on eBay, like let's say that's your budget, and you're going to go on eBay, you're going to spend that $100, or you're going to a card show, I would recommend to you that you spend all $100 on one card, one quality card. Now, I know that that's not as fun as, buying a box of packs and buying 4 cards or 5 cards, but in the long run, it's a lot more fun to have a quality card that's a great investment. And just to, further on that point, this is 27 Curt Schilling rookie cards. Again, cards from my childhood. There's another one here. And then, so these are like $4 a piece, according to Beckett. And then you have this Marcus Stroman rookie card, which is worth about $50. I would rather have, even though this is worth like, over $100, if you, take $4 a piece, I would much rather have this Marcus Stroman card, because nobody's interested in buying, these types of cards, like singles like this. It's much easier to purchase a quality card that you could resell. So, it just a recommendation in terms of going quality over quantity. Next up is don't buy packs. So here's a pack. Don't buy me. You are not. Here's the thing with packs. Every time I open a pack, a box of packs, I always think that maybe today's the day that I hit that Superfractor Carlos Correa auto, and it's never happened, and it never will happen. And you know what? I see a lot of times, I see people do breaks on the internet, and they always say that they'd be happy if they break even. So, if you're happy to get to break even, that sounds like, Vegas. It really, like, if you're opening packs, it is like taking a gamble. One of the things that I wanted to show you guys, like, this is Bowman Chrome. This is a box of Bowman Chrome. You get 5 autographs. It's $153. So if you open a box like this, you're going to get 1 good card, then 4 autos of guys you've never heard of before. So what I would recommend instead is to buy singles. And maybe I'll do it one day, actually buy a box and then buy singles off the internet and see what you get better value from. I guarantee you 99% of the time, if you buy singles rather than buying a box of packs, the singles will always be better than what you get. Every once in a while, the box of packs will win out. But I just picked out, so what I did is I spent $150. I didn't actually spend it, but I put these cards on my watch list. So I got, for $150, I got a Gregory Polanco rookie die cut auto to 25. I got this Jock Peterson rookie auto numbered to 150 for 35. Byron Buxton numbered to 99. This might be a good time to buy him because he was the number 1 prospect and he's had some injuries. So now that he's had these issues, maybe now is the time to buy. I got a Trey Turner auto for $10, which is a crazy steal. Alex Reyes, so Trey Turner and Alex Reyes are two top 25 prospects, and then got 9 Carlos Correa rookie cards. So if you pick that up for $150 and then you open a box for $150, good luck trying to get, that type of box, those types of returns in a box of packs. Let's say for number 3, let's say you do buy a box of packs. What I recommend is to buy something like this, where you're guaranteed to get 5 autographs, rather than the worst thing you can do is to buy retail. And I've done this so many times. You go to like Target, and if you go to Target, Walmart, they have these boxes of cards. Sometimes they'll package different packs and put them in, and I'll put a link to it. It's like I did a Father's Day video of it. There's virtually, the chances of getting an autograph or a big card are very slim. So if you're going to buy a box of packs, the best thing to do is buy something like this, where you're guaranteed autographs, like something that's from Topps or from Bowman that guarantees a certain amount of autographs. Number 4, and I sort of alluded to it already, is avoid the hype. So just as an example, this Beckett was back in April of 2014. And what Beckett does is they have a hot list. My recommendation to you is that if a card is on the hot list, to avoid it like the plague. This is an example, like this Masahiro Tanaka. This is when Tanaka first came onto the scene. They got him for $30. This is when Frank Thomas first retired. Clint Frazier was hot back then. Byron Buxton was really hot. This is a Bowman Sterling for $80. I remember when Yasiel Puig, about 2 years ago, when he was really hot, his cards were selling for really high. That is the worst time to buy a card. So avoid the hype if you can. I've fallen for that many times, so I can't blame you. But number 5, short prints and variations. So if you're going to buy a box of packs, it's important to know that there are short prints and variations. So let me see if I can dig that up. Short prints and variations. Here we go. So this is an example. So let's say you were to buy, and this is a good website. It's Cardboard Connection. Let's say we're to open a box of 2016 Topps Series 1. You can see here that this is the base card, but then there's a variation which looks like any other card, but it's a short print variation. So if you're going to open a box, it's helpful to know that that's a short print variation, because collectors will pay a lot of money sometimes for these variations, as well as this one's a super variation SSP. Here's an example from my personal collection. Like I said, it looks like any other card. It looks like a common card, but it's a variation. And if you look it up in Cardboard Connection, you'll be able to see a picture of all the variations. Another thing that you'll notice is that there's a code in the bottom right here. If it's a regular common card, there'll be a code that you'll see over and over again. And if the code is something a little bit different, that's another way to know that it's a variation. So another thing that you'll see with cards these days is they'll be numbered on the back. So in this case, Bowman does a lot. So you would look at this card and just think it was a regular, Mike Trout Bowman Chrome, which is still a good card. But the fact that it's numbered to 99 makes it even more valuable. The fact that there's only, this one's 57 of 99. So just always keep in mind that there could be variations, there could be short prints, and then sometimes on the back it'll actually state that. But the variations are a little bit tougher to pick out because they look like any other card. So number 6, PSA, BGS, and SGC. My recommendation is that you do not buy anything other than those 3 companies when it comes to graded cards. So PSA, BGS, and SGC. BGS, as sort of a rule of thumb, BGS is, if you're going to invest in BGS, it's best to do BGS from the 1980s or higher. So just to show you guys, this is an example of a BGS or Beckett card. So 1980 to today, if it's 1980 or higher, it's best to go with BGS. It's really cheap. Let me show you. Let me see if I can pull it up. Yeah, let me show you here. So this is an example. If you get 31 cards graded for BGS, it's $9 a card. Of course, you have to wait 45 days for it. And this is another example. If you're going to submit, always try to do it. Look at these service levels, because if I submit 31 cards and I'm okay with waiting 45 days, it's $9 a card. Whereas if you were to not know any better and you submit 5 cards, you're gonna spend $11 a card or $30 a card, and then on-site grading, let's say you just want to get 1 card graded, it's going to cost you $35 a card. So it's important to know these different service levels. I recommend that you submit your cards in bulk. Another thing that is big with graded cards is that there's a pop report. So what I did here is I looked up 2010 Bowman Sterling Buster Posey. So one of the things that people do all the time is they're like, okay, well, this is a 1 of 1. So you can see here that the Bowman Sterling purple refractor, that there is, well, actually it looks like there's only 1 card that is a 10, which I own this card. It's the refractor version of the Buster Posey 2010. So what I can do, it's called a population report. You look up the card, if it's graded already, and you could actually see how many 10s have been given out. So right now there's literally only 1 for the 2010 Bowman Sterling, and I'm the owner of that card. And if you're selling the card, it's helpful to know, because then you could say, this is the only one out there. This is the only 2010 Bowman Sterling Buster Posey out there that's graded a 10 on BGS. Another rule of thumb, another thing that I wanted to point out with Beckett is that Beckett's a little confusing, because there's BGS and then there is BVG. So anything before 1980 is graded by BVG. And then on top of that, there's a subsidiary called BCCG. And the rule of thumb with BCCG is that if it's a Mint 10, that's sort of the equivalent to a PSA 9. Although I have to tell you, if it's a really valuable card, I would never buy a BCCG. It's legit. I'm not like, if it's in a BCCG holder, it's an authentic card. But I would be very weary about, a very valuable card that's graded in a BCCG holder. The rule of thumb as far as getting cards graded is BGS for 1980s or higher, PSA for 1950 to 1980, although I think, in my opinion, it's 1910, basically the T206 set to 1980. I'd rather have a PSA graded card from that 1910 to 1980, and then anything before 1910, it's best to have SGC. So if that helps you with, when you're submitting cards in terms of getting the best value for your cards, that's, in my opinion, those are the best ways to go. Is to go, if it's if it's a card from 1970, submit it to PSA. If it's a card from 1900, submit it to SGC. And then again, avoid, like the plague, any other grading companies. I would recommend, especially when it comes to purchasing, be very careful. There's a lot of bad companies out there. The cool thing about Beckett, just want to point out, is that you can register for free. All this is totally free, and you don't have to pay anything for it. You just have to log in with an email address. To be a PSA member, so like when you're submitting cards for Beckett, it's totally free. You don't have to do it you have to pay for the cards, but to get graded, but there's no subscription fee. Whereas PSA, there is a subscription fee. So just something to keep in mind also. And another thing that Beckett as well as PSA offers is with each card there is a serial number. And let's see if I can see it here. Yeah, it's right here. So this serial number, if you just like, especially if you're buying it off eBay, you might as well put the serial number in here and just verify that the card that you're looking for comes up. So just something also, and this is again totally free. PSA offers it. I don't think SGC actually offers that. So that's one weird thing that I noticed, is that SGC has a serial number, but you can't look it up. So next up, another thing that I wanted to point out is that you can submit. So let's say you wanted to get, let's say I'm looking at this Robin Roberts card and I'm not happy with it and I want to get this card graded by PSA. What I would recommend, again, is that you don't try to break this out of the case yourself. You could actually submit the card like this to PSA or BGS, and they will regrade the card. And you could actually say to them, I want a minimum of a 7. For, like, let's say you're submitting to PSA, I want a minimum of a 7, or I don't want it, I want it left in this holder. So you could actually say, my minimum is a 7. Otherwise, please leave it in this holder, and they will leave it in that holder, and you don't have to crack it out of the case. Of course, if you don't crack it out of the case, there's always a worry that they're going to look at this and going to be like, well, BVG gave it a 7, so I'm not going to give it an 8 because our standards are higher. So that's the only problem with not cracking it out of the case. But to me, I would rather be safe than sorry, is basically what I'm going to say there. So number 7, centering is everything. When it comes to, and a lot of people will point this out when they're selling cards, they'll say that the card is dead centered. And I think this is a good point. Somebody, I think it was Eliteco that I follow, said this, is that when you're buying a card, don't buy the grade, buy the card. So this is an example, again, the Robin Roberts. This is a card that I really like, even though it's a 7. So this is a card that I would buy. It's really nicely centered. It's a beautiful card, and I don't even care that it's a 7. The fact that it's holdered, it probably could be an 8, but I don't. When I buy cards, especially, I look at the grade, obviously it's important, but I focus more on the card and whether it's something that I think is aesthetically pleasing. Now, here's an example of a card that I don't like. So this is a card that I've had in my collection for a while, and it's a 6, but in my opinion, it should be a lot lower than a 6. It's way off center. Here's the back, and it's even more off center in the back. So, this, if this was a 6 and it was compared against another card that's a 6, I'm always going to go for the card that's centered than the card that's not centered. There are four ways that card companies grade. You have centering, you have edges, corners, and surface. Again, I'm just going to say that centering is the most important thing. It's the most important thing to collectors. You'll see, in my opinion, I would rather own like a PSA 4 that's perfectly centered than a PSA 5 that's way off center. That's just my opinion. I think a lot of people actually follow that opinion as well, because I see cards selling for different amounts. Like it'll be the same grade, but the one that's centered sells for a lot more. So next up, number 8, eBay. It's important, if you're going to collect these days, you need to know about eBay. And because it's pretty amazing. It's basically brought the entire hobby together. So what I did here is I typed in a Ty Cobb PSA 5 T206. One of the things that you have to know is that if you scroll down over here, you can actually put in sold listings. And I do this all the time. If I'm going to make a purchase, I always check to see how much it's sold for recently, because I want to make sure that if I'm going to purchase a card that I'm getting a decent deal. So you can see here that a PSA 5 sold for $47.50. Another one sold for $5,000. So you just want to be aware. When I go to a baseball card show, if I see a card that I like, I will go on eBay and actually check recently sold listings to make sure that I'm not getting completely ripped off, and that I'm not, getting infatuated with a card that I'm overpaying for. I don't mind overpaying, but I don't want to be taken for either. So just be. eBay is a really great place to just sort of get a feel for how much cards are going for. If you're buying cards, be very careful, especially if they're not graded and if they're a vintage card. I would, if I'm buying something on eBay, if it's more than $100, and it's especially if it's a vintage card, I would only stick to PSA, SGC, and BVG. If it's not in one of those holders, I recommend that you don't buy it. Unless, the only other time maybe I would consider it is if the seller has, one thing I always do is I check the seller rating, make sure that the person that's selling the card is highly rated, you can see here, this guy, PWCC Auctions, they're a huge company, but you can see here they have 83,230 feedback items on feedback. They get good, great ratings. Just be very careful. If somebody has, 13 feedbacks, and it's not graded, it's something that happened to me. So just be very careful. Make sure that they have a return policy. If it turns out that, you sometimes, especially, you see it on the internet, unless you have the card in hand, sometimes it's really hard to see some of, maybe there's a corner that's banged up that you didn't notice, or especially if the card is fake. So just be very careful of that. Another thing that I like to do is I like to know if a card's being watched. So there is this website called watchcount.com. So you can, and I did this with the Ty Cobb T206. So I just typed that in, and then I can see here, I could sort it by the cards that have the most people watching it. The reason why I do that is I think it's if a card is high in demand, then sometimes that's a good card to keep an eye on, because if a lot of people are interested in it, that means it's probably a very valuable card, and it probably has some great resale value. So you can see here, this card has 49 people watching it right now. The current bid is $459, but it's got 3 days left. So just be aware of some of the features. And I'm sure if you used eBay, that you can do an auction, or you can buy it now. A lot of times I'll just buy it now. I'll find a card that's in a decent at a decent price for the grade, and then I'll just buy it if it's the right price. Number 9, card shows. So if you go to I highly recommend going to card shows. Some people will just be selling cards, and they're just trying to get their name out there, and they'll sell cards to you for cheap. One thing with card shows is you can't be afraid to negotiate. The expectation is that you're going to negotiate. So if a card is selling for $100 at a card show, there's nothing wrong with asking the guy what's the best you can do, or just saying, hey, I'll give you $80 for it, and negotiate. They expect that you're going to negotiate, so you shouldn't be afraid to offer a lower price, and go back and forth with the seller. So just keep that in mind when going to card shows. And then finally, number 10 is just, I'll leave you with this: vintage over modern. I consider anything that's modern to be 1980 or to present. Modern cards have so much fluctuation. It's so hard to tell. You never know, who would have thought that Tiger Woods' career would have gone the way it's gone. And you see this all the time with guys that are sure things. And it's not just that. You see cards that they become hot for a while. If a player is in the Hall of Fame, there's rarely anything that's really bad that's going to happen with the card in terms of value. You know that the supply is never going to go up and the demand continues to go up. I've just seen all of the vintage cards just go up and up and up. And one of the things, again, that I'll leave you with, that if I were to focus on investing, let's say my recommendation, throw everything else that I said out the window. What I would recommend, let's say you have $100. This is how I would do it. I go to a card show. That's where I think you get the best deals. I would find Hall of Fame cards that are in great condition that are not graded. And that's been my focus. So and I think I've shown this in previous videos. This isn't a Hall of Fame card, but it's a really nice condition card from 52 Topps. Obviously, you got Ernie Banks. In these cards, you can get at a really, really good price if they're not graded. And after a while, if you can sort of get an eye for, centering, and, a lot of times if you just take a little step back and the card looks really nice, then that's something that is a great, great investment. And if it's not graded, you're not going to have to pay as much for it. So what I would recommend, you go to card shows, buy the best cards that you see, look at every single card, find cards that you think are in great condition of Hall of Famers, if you could do Hall of Famers. So there's a Ron Santo rookie, Phil Rizzuto, Roger Maris rookie. And the beauty about vintage cards is that they don't need to be perfect. They just have to be, nicely centered, look pretty nice. If I can submit these and get, a PSA 6 or a PSA 7, the return in terms of how much I spent and how much they're worth after I submit them there's no deal like that on eBay. And it's just a great way to collect, and it's fun too, because what I'll do is I'll collect all of these cards. I'll try to get to that 31, whatever the service level is. So if it was Beckett, it would be 31. I'm not sure what it is with PSA, but you get to that threshold. You submit them. You wait for the 45 days. Be patient. It's better to spend less per card on grading, and that's what I would recommend. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully you got something out of it. I understand that a lot of people probably disagree with some of my theories, but that's totally fine. And I appreciate the comments. I appreciate you guys watching, and please let me know if you have any comments. So thanks a lot.